Hello and welcome to SweetSpotDFS. This is a preview video for the 2021 WGC Match Play event. But before we get into the video, I want to remind you guys there are timestamps in the description below. Also on YouTube, the progress bar is cut up into segments. If you hover over it, it'll show you what those segments are. Just makes navigating easier and faster. But I'm giving away my optimizer somewhere in the middle of this video. I'll give you steps on how to actually get it. This is just my way of rewarding my loyal viewers and supporters who like to watch this video in full. So you can find the optimizer there. And the reason you want this optimizer, it is built for match play. It is built for optimal lineup creation. If you aren't aware, if you haven't heard yet in the industry, there are wrong ways to build lineups this week. And all has to do with the pods and the groups and the quadrants that are within this tournament bracket. So I'm going to go over that, at the end of the video with the optimizer to show you guys how to use it. But if you want to actually get the optimizer, you're going to have to find it in the middle of the video. Okay, let's go ahead and get in this preview video. This is going to be slightly different than past weeks because of the match play format. There are certain things we just don't need to be looking at. We don't need to look at cut information. We really don't need to look at a weather forecast because when a golfer's playing against another golfer, they're on the same hole, experience the same weather. And although maybe I would agree with you guys that would make the argument that wind, some golfers are better in it than others, I'm going to say it's extremely minimal because when it's mano-a-mano, really you're both affected and you're playing against each other. You're not really so much playing against a score. So it's really very, very, very minimally important. So we're not going to look at weather forecast. I am still going to be looking at the tournament fact sheets. Actually, very first thing we're going to talk about is DraftKings scoring this week because it is very different than past weeks. So we'll go over that first, and then we'll get into tournament fact sheets. Then I'm going to bring up historical salaries and optimal lineups just to see how an optimal lineup kind of looks like for a match play event. I'm going to go over the bucket system, but we're not going to include last year buckets, and we're not going to include course history buckets. Primarily because we didn't have a tournament last year because of COVID. It canceled this tournament. Also, course history is kind of weird. I am going to cover course history, but we're only going to be looking at top 5 finishes at this tournament just to see if there's a little bit of an edge there. But because it's like pod, you're golfing within pods, and it's just really weird to give a placement based off of, certain things. Plus, I also don't really have it updated. You're going to see it's kind of weird how I had it, how I originally did this. I'm working on a database, and I actually have a whole match play table created that has wins and losses and stuff like that. But for my spreadsheets, I just didn't have the time to update. So we're not really going to be going over course history. But we will also be going over recent form. So we'll definitely look at that because that is going to matter. And again, we're going to be looking at recent form buckets. If you're unfamiliar with SweetSpotDFS, I really only care about the top 10. I'm only looking at the top 10. I'm trying to create that optimal lineup. And I couldn't be more excited about match play because it's really easy I think it's easier to actually get on because there are only certain avenues you can do with building lineups that are optimal. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into this thing. Thank you guys for going through that intro with me. So DraftKings scoring, first and foremost, much different. We're not looking at birdies. We're not looking at eagles, no birdie streaks, no rounds under 70. We're looking at holes won, holes halved, holes lost, holes not played, meaning if a golfer beats another golfer with, say, 5 holes left to play, he wins his match with 5 holes left to play, the winner's going to get 1.6 points per hole. So that's going to matter. And unfortunately, I don't have statistics for match play to see which types of golfers do that, but you can imagine most of the elite golfers can get that done. I think one of the championship matches was 8-7. So I can't remember who it was. I want to say it was Bubba against Kisner, Kevin Kisner. I think he won 8-7. So he had 7 holes added to his score if DraftKings was playing back then, but I'm pretty sure they weren't. That's big. That bonus is huge. That's going to win a GPP. So you can see the points on the screen. I think I have another one that kind of goes a little bit more over the rules. Let me just hide some of this so it's not too difficult. Let me zoom in a little bit if I can. No? Shoot. It just kind of goes over the rules. I would suggest if you're doing DraftKings, go ahead and look at the rules and scoring within the contest details. It's going to give you that option of seeing what it is. It's very important. You guys should understand how it's done. Let's go ahead and look at the tournament fact sheets. Again, this is just going to be a quick, overview or whatever you want to call it, just to get you guys familiar. Now, this information here, if you want to look it up, a 7,100 yard par 71, golfers who do better on that, they might have a little slight edge. I'm going to probably put in the same category as win stats for this week. Probably not going to matter that much because it's guy versus guy, really. It's not guy. It is guy versus golf course. But unlike stroke play where it's just you against the golf course, obviously you have a guy that you're trying to beat. And I just don't think it's going to matter. This information too, I don't think really matters that much. I don't care about I care about hazards of play. Like if someone, scores a lot of penalties, I don't have that data, but if you do, maybe it's something to look at. There are 7 holes where water's in play. Bunkers to me, not a big deal. These are pros. They love playing out of the sand more so than they do out of the rough. One of the bigger pieces of information that I find important right here, turf grass. So my thought always is if the GCSAA, this little company here, why can't I think of what it's called? I know it's Golf Course Superintendent Association of America. If they're including that there's overseed, that means the overseed is the most pertinent grass. It's the most important grass. So although it does say Bermuda grass, you're going to see this throughout the industry that people are using Bermuda grass. My thing is, if a superintendent's including it, I worked at, on a golf course, I worked for a grounds crew for a long period of time. I worked within them when I was in the business side of it. They're not going to mention this information if it isn't important. So the fact that they show POA as your overseed means that POA is probably more important than Bermuda grass. Same goes with your fairways. In the rough, 2 inches, I'm not sure why that's not overseeded. It's really weird. I don't understand why some of this information is the way it is, but there it is. You have it there. And then, of course, our architect is Pete Dye. There are golfers that love Pete Dye golf courses. So, and there are golfers that do better on Pete Dye golf courses. You definitely want to be looking at that information just to get a little leg up. Really, these are just deciding points. They should just be weights. So if you are tied with another golfer that you're interested in, if one is better than Pete Dye than the other, then play that. But then again, if one's recent form is better than the other, you should mitigate the Pete Dye stats. So, we're going to be looking at Pete Dye stats. We're also going to be looking at grass stats. I forgot to mention that. So we'll definitely do that here a little bit later in the video. The next piece of information, I would start with results, but it really does not matter. I want to go over the salaries. Actually, let's go over the bracket first. No. I'm sorry. We're going to go over course history first. Again, I'm not too keen on this course history. Basically, a 17th place is a missed cut. Obviously, golfers who escape the pods, let's just talk about that quickly. So, the tournament starts in pods. This is one pod. This is another pod. They all play each other once. So there'll be 3 matches played within each of these pods. And whoever has the most wins goes on to the next round of playoffs or round of the tournament. So let's say Sung Jae gets 3 victories over all these guys. He goes here. And let's say DJ gets all 3 victories. Then he comes here. And then it just goes, sudden death basically from there. Not so much sudden death, but you know what I'm saying. If you lose, you're out. So, I mean, let's say DJ wins, he'll go to the next round, and so on and so forth. But first, it starts in these pods. So, if you don't get out of the pods, that is where I give you a 17th place. Now, if you get, if you do exit the pod and you're continuing playing, that means you're in the round of 16. So that means 16 golfers made it past the pods. So therefore, the place just before it would be 17th. That's why it's showing 17th place. That's why these stats are kind of wonky, and I don't want to go over them because it just does not reflect good or bad performance as well as it should. So we're not looking at course history. We're going to look at top fives. So the most top fives at this tournament is Louis Oosthuizen. He has 4 of them. That's big. And Louis is in a pod this week that you're going to see is huge. Like, they call it the pod of death because there's 4 golfers that could easily win the thing. And Justin Thomas is a part of it. So it's a bad draw for JT, but we'll go there, or we'll talk about it once we get there. But Louis Oosthuizen, 4 top fives. You got to look out for him. Jason Day has 3, so he's the next guy. And then we have a couple guys here with 2, including Matt Kuchar, Kevin Kisner, Rory McIlroy, Ian Poulter, and Dustin Johnson. Now, DJ and Rory are kind of your high-price guys. So anchoring around them might be very beneficial this week, but maybe not. I mean, we're going to see with historical salaries that being the high-price guy isn't so great at this tournament. Then we have a few guys down here that have 1 top 5 to their name. Very interesting. I didn't see Justin Thomas at first, but Justin Thomas is here with 1 top 5, as is Jordan Spieth, Sergio Garcia, Webb Simpson, John Rahm, Paul Casey, Bubba Watson, Cameron Smith, and Tommy Fleetwood, and Kevin Na. I don't know if I mentioned Kevin Na, but either way, those are your other guys with 1 top 5 here at this event. So out of 64 golfers, only 17 of them have had top 5 finishes here. Notables, I guess, would be Hideki. Hideki's played here a lot. You can see what his record is. Not very good. Again, all these 17s are basically, he was not able to escape the pod. Patrick Reed is another one. A lot of guys like him because of the Ryder Cup format and how he's Captain America and whatever. He has not placed better than 9th. Most of his have not escaped the pod. Bryson DeChambeau's only played once here and didn't escape his pod. Let's see. Any other ones? Xander Schauffele, only 2 events. I'm not going to really beg him for that. Bernd Wiesberger has been here 5 times, has not gone out of the pods. And then we have a bunch of people here, first time playing this event. We have 23 to be exact, which is that is important things to talk about. And we'll actually cover that in the bucket system. Let's actually move from here to historical salaries. Now, I only have 2 years worth of data, unfortunately. So I have 2019 and 2018. And as you can see, usually each tournament we have, 8? We have 8 top 5 finishers. So that's how it just is always going to look. I don't put a place for, again, looking at that bracket, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th show up right here. Once you get to the semifinals, you're already rewarded or awarded at least a top 4 place. The guys who actually lose in the quarterfinals, I'm giving all 5th place finishes because there's no one way to determine one guy got 6th, 7th, or 8th. So that's why we have 8 guys inside the top 5. And that's why when we look at the salaries and when we look at top 5 stats, it's going to include 8 golfers all the time. So as you can see some of the salaries right here, and that's why it's set up the way it is. I like to look here. This is usually what I cover right away. When we look at the winner, 2019, a guy at $7,000 won this tournament, and in 2018, $8,200 won this tournament, which is remarkable. I shouldn't say remarkable, but it wouldn't be something you actually think was going to happen. Again, DraftKings started this in 2018. We didn't have DraftKings for match play in 2017. So, I mean, like Rory McIlroy has won this tournament before. You can guarantee you, and same with Dustin Johnson, you can guarantee that they would have been high priced if they had, well, in that particular tournament. I can't remember when Rory won it, but Rory, DJ, they've won it. They would have been easily 10K, 11K. So keep that in the back of your head. But obviously, for the DraftKings salaries that I actually have, we don't see that. In fact, when we look at the rest of the stats, just looking at top 10s and just in general, that's what these stats here represent. 34% comes from the 7K range of all top 10s. And then from there, 22 are in the 6K range and 25 are in the 8K range. That doesn't leave a lot of percentage points left for 9K and above. And you can see within inside the top 10, these are basically guys who make it past the pods. Not a lot of them are in, that 9K and above range. And really not a lot are top 5 finishers. If we look at the analysis down here, this is kind of looking at each of these price buckets and showing the top 5 frequency and the top 10 frequency of each of these price range buckets. So 40% of all 11K golfers have finished in, not 40%. How do I look at this? Of all 11K golfers, only 40% has finished inside the top 10, 20% inside the top 5, 0% for top 5 10K and above golfers, or 10K to 11K. So just looking at your top priced guys doesn't look very good for them, if I'm being quite honest. The rest of these price buckets are huge. 25% of 9K buckets, just within the 9K, finishes inside the top 10. That's pretty good. 38% of 8K golfers finish inside the top 10. That's really good. 25% for 7K. When compared against other tournaments, this is a fantastic number. And even better, the 17% that's below 7K, so the 6K range. That's insane. And when we look at optimal lineups, if we go back to 2018, we're looking at basically your top 5 guys. Like, look at the price. No matter what it is, if we take these 4, doesn't matter who these guys are. They all have basically a $6,900 price range or price tag. Everyone who finished in 5th place. So it doesn't matter if I grab Affy Barnrat and Cameron Smith. These are 6 golfers. That salary equals $49,500. So we did have an 11K guy in that tournament. But everybody else, you can see what their salaries are. 2 8Ks, 2 7s, and a 6. Now in 2019, if we look at the optimal lineup, I'm guessing I must have had it by points, because I don't know why. I don't have any determination of what it is. When I wrote this down, I must have had it by points. Had to have been. But it would have been these guys here that equal 48,300. No 10K golfer, no 11K golfer, 1 9K or 2 9K golfers, an 8K, 2 8Ks, a 7, and a 6. If we were trying to build a realistic lineup, maybe we don't get Tiger and we throw in Rory. Nope, can't do that. Justin Rose, that's 49,100. So creating lineups is going to be really interesting, because as you can see, you probably don't want many 9K guys, or not 9K guys, but you don't want anyone finishing here, in 9th place, especially someone who is 10 or 11K. So I would say this, if you're building, well, let's put a percentage. If I'm looking at the salaries here, 40% of 11K guys finish inside the top 10. That's not good enough. We need this top 5 number, 20% 11K and above. I would actually extend that to 10K and above and just give this all 20%. If you're creating lineups, perhaps only allocate 20% of your lineups to 10K and above golfers. I mean, it kind of shows, at least the last 2 years hasn't been good, historically not good when it comes to 10K and above golfers. But again, we've seen a Dustin Johnson win this tournament. We've seen a Rory McIlroy. Jason Day, when he won this tournament, he was number 1, or at least he was, I think this tournament solidified his number 1 status in the world. They all would have been 10K and above golfers if they were all priced then. So Perhaps, I mean, like last year, it didn't work out. So keep that in the back of your mind when you're creating lineups. Okay. Let's go ahead and actually just get into the bucket system. I have found a different way to show this data. Usually you're probably used to seeing, you know, this bucket here and me scrolling through everything, and it's hard to keep track and pay attention. So I created a summary that will give us the information I talk about, the information that I find important. And I can filter out by the buckets. Like if I open this up to everything, you can see all 4 buckets I usually talk about: last year, last week, course history, recent form. This probably looks busy to you, and quite frankly, I don't. To me, I totally understand. There we go. So what we're gonna do is just clear it out and look at each bucket by itself. So we're gonna be looking at last week and recent form. So how this reads, I mean, I kind of gave you a little bit of information here if you want to read that, just to help out. I know some people get confused when I talk about this. My rankings for each bucket. So you can see which bucket it is last week and then the rank. So this would be a last week 3. These rankings are based off the total amount of golfers who finish inside the top 10 from the years 2013 to 2020. And that's how I rank it. So that's what you're going to see on the spreadsheet as to, you know, their bucket score for last week. Now, there are more pieces of information here. The min max is the amount of times, you know, any one of these buckets. So obviously you're looking across. If we're looking at last week ones, we're looking across. So what this is saying for min is this is the least amount of times that this bucket has shown up inside the top 10 each year. Each year. So when we see a number higher than 1, that is very important. Now, 0 means there have been duds from year to year. At least there's been at least 1 dud, I should say. So if I were to pull up that bucket, obviously I'm keeping track of all of this information. So if I go to the top 10 bucket here and I scroll across, you can see in bucket 4, well, let's not look at last week. Let's look at not last year, but let's look at last week. When we look at bucket 5, we see 1-0. So that means there's been at least 1-0. And I'm taking the least, the smallest number that shows up. Again, it's a minimum function. So if you're familiar with what minimum functions are, it's exactly what it is. But yeah, this shows the least amount of times it's happened each year. And then this shows the most amount of times it's happened each year. These numbers are important because you can just basically anchor your lineups with 4 guys who did not play last week. Now, there are some very elite golfers who did not play last week. We're more likely going to see those guys inside the top 10. But top 10 at this tournament, not as important as top 5. So obviously I have my top 5 frequencies here. Again, you have your min and your max and the percentage that this bucket finishes inside the top 5. Of all golfers in this bucket, that's what that percentage represents. So 9.23% of all last year ones have finished inside the top 10. It's probably the wrong way to say that, but I hope you get my gist. If you're just going by percentage alone, last week bucket 6 is your best bet. But at most we've seen it twice, inside the top 10, and at most inside the top 5 we've only seen it once. That's not a necessarily good bucket to go by. This is really important information here. So I have the average per year for how many guys are actually in each of these buckets. So you can see per year, there are usually 8 golfers that fit this last week 3 bucket. This year, there are only 2. And you can obviously see the difference. The big difference is this 50 number. So this should equal 64 as it does. This should be around 60. It's a 64 as well. 13 more golfers fall under this did not play bucket, meaning we're more likely going to see multiple guys in this bucket finish inside the top 5 as well as the top 10. So hopefully that was easier to understand. Now, cut made, I have it based off of getting out of the pods, not the typical 85 that I have. So again, what cut made here are golfers who escape the pods. Actually, it's really buckets that escape the pods. So you can see there isn't really a high number for any of these, meaning I'm not going to really use this all that much. To me, I'm looking here really when it comes to min maxes for top 5 frequency. It's pretty even. So I'd say don't get cute. You can obviously see bucket 1, bucket 2, and bucket 3 are your most important buckets. Bucket 1 by far away and above the better of all the buckets. But yeah, definitely keep all that information in mind. So last week, we'll go to recent form buckets and look at the recent form buckets. Your number 1 bucket, golfers who fall in that 20 to 40 range. So this is their average finishing position looking at the last 7 weeks. If they fall in that 20 to 40 range, they would be under recent form bucket 1. If they fall under that 40 to 60 range, they'd be under recent form bucket 2. The same thing applies what we were just talking about last week. So you can see what the top 10 percentage is for each of these buckets. But again, we want to be looking at the top 5 percentage because this is how we're going to win a GPP at a match play event. There are always 8 golfers inside the top 5. So we're going to look at this and trying to find someone who is in that 1 to 20 range as well as that 20 to 40 range is going to be important. Bucket 1, 2, and 3, just like what we saw with the last week bucket, are your important buckets to be looking at. So let's just go ahead and look at that. I forget to do this during the preview video because it usually takes too long. But if we're looking at our recent form bucket 1 guys, we have, let's see, what's the total here? 24 golfers within this bucket. And obviously most of our 10K guys are up here. So recent form bucket 1 is most likely going to finish inside the top 10 or top 5, I should say. We're probably going to see 2 of them at least. So if you want to anchor your lineups around any of these guys, perfect. That's the way to do it. If we want to try to find a little bit different lineup building, recent form bucket 2 has 20 golfers in it. And really, I could tell you this by looking right here, looking at recent form. Or maybe we can't. Why is that? Oh, I didn't update the actual buckets. So we do have to go by this. I didn't update. I should call that back. So for this year, I didn't update it. So I'm sorry. Did we not do it for the recent form bucket? I'm just wondering why they're not pulling in properly. Interesting. I'm wondering if this is looking at the wrong data. Oh well. Don't mind what it says on the summary. That's really the only one that's wrong. Which is unfortunate. Like I should have looked it over. So J, yeah, I'm just gonna change it right now on the fly. So we look at 2021 and we want to be looking at G. So we were way off. So basically J for G, and this should help. There you go. So we have the 20 like we said we were. Okay. Sorry for that little mishap there. So there we go. 20 shows up. Perfect. Going back to this though. If you wanted to start your lineups here, maybe if you like Webb Simpson, perfect. Go with him. We're most likely going to see 1 or 2 guys from this bucket inside the top 5. So if you have any good choices, especially low price guys, that might be your edge, is trying to find a low price last year or recent form 2, or perhaps a recent form 3. There aren't a lot here. John Rahm fits that bucket. So does Jordan Spieth. Now, if we go back to the summary and look at 3, we have a min of 1, a max of 4. So obviously picking out of this bucket would not be terrible. Like, we want to pick at least 1. As you can see, it's 0 for recent form bucket 2. Meaning what we just saw with Webb Simpson in that, not the greatest bucket to go by. But this one, we want at least 1. So do we anchor around Jon Rahm, Jordan Spieth? Maybe we go with Im. If we go with Im, then we wouldn't want to go with DJ, and I'll show you why. But, you know, interesting way to build lineups or to look at them. Also, we can do the same thing with the last week buckets. So last week bucket 1, obviously you can see, you know, a lot of the recent form guys stay here and the colors stay the same. We have 50 out of 64. So we're not going to get an edge by looking at 50 golfers. But if we were to go ahead and see what our other mins are. So if top 5, yeah, it's not good. 2s, 1s, and 3s. Yeah, it's not really the information I'm hoping to see. I mean, these are the only kind of ray of sunshine for last week 4 and last week 2. I'm probably going to stay away. Let's select all and just get rid of the 1s. So this is what you're left with. Sung Jae, he finished top 20 last week, as did Russell Henley. So they are your last week 3s. They might not be bad golfers to choose around. Obviously, we just talked about recent form bucket 3s. But when it comes to last week, yeah, it's not showing a min of 0. That's the only way I'd feel comfortable, is if they at least showed up once, you know, every single year inside the top 10 or top 5, and they don't. So I'm not too comfortable playing. I mean, I was kind of excited to play Sung Jae, but maybe not so much anymore. I still will play him, but probably not as much. But you can see the rest of the guys here. Obviously, I'm probably not really looking to build lineups around these guys anyways. But you can see who doesn't fit under that last week 1. This is where you would find an edge since the smaller numbers are here. Okay, so that wraps up the bucket system when it comes to last week and recent form. Now what I want to do is, in order to get the optimizer, what you need to do is like this video. You actually have to be subscribed to me first. Like this video. Put a comment in the comment section telling me, actually, you go ahead, write whatever you want. I don't care. Tell me who your favorite play is. Tell me what your favorite bucket is. Anything. Doesn't matter. Just a comment in the comment section. I'll leave it up to you guys. And then, unfortunately, since I can't see your email address from your YouTube account, you're going to have to email me and say, I want this optimizer. So I'll check to see if you're subscribed. I'll check to see, well, provide your YouTube name. I'll see if you're subscribed. And obviously, based off the amount of likes, I'll go by that. But that's how you will get this optimizer, which again, I will show you later here. If you're on Twitter, what you could do is like the video and share it. You don't have to do the YouTube stuff, but obviously follow me, like the video that I post, and then retweet it. And then I'll reach out to you. Either way, I'm still going to have to email you the optimizer. So that is the way in order to get the optimizer. Okay, let's move on to the next piece of information. Now, I actually kind of want to go over, I did enter some data from, you know, the spreadsheet that I was working on for the database, the table that I have. The most match play wins in this field belongs to Ian Poulter, followed by Sergio Garcia. Actually, you can read a lot of these guys on the spreadsheet in front of you. I think wins matter more so than win percentage, but win percentage, I get it, will give you a little bit more confidence. You can see Sung Jae has 100% win percentage. He only has 1 win, meaning he only played 1 match play event. Kevin Kisner, 14 wins, 66.67%, but then you see Poulter there with 43 wins, 66.15%. Jason Day, 24 wins, 63.16%. And then Rory McIlroy, who's been going through some swing issues, he's at 61.54%. To me, again, I think wins matter the most, but obviously I will be looking at this match play win percentage. And by the way, this whole sheet is also going to be on the optimizer. So if you want the optimizer, obviously I just mentioned how you can get it. So if you didn't see that part yet, just rewind a little bit and you'll see what you need to do. But yeah, this will be, I will show this and you can have this access. Yeah, to me, I'm probably going more with wins. Doesn't mean I'm going to play a lot of Ian Poulter, but $6,700 for Ian Poulter, that's pretty good. It really allows me to like Rory as well as DJ. I do like those two guys at the top. And then win percentage for me just gives you a good idea. Like Kevin Kisner would be a good choice. Rory once again. Louis, obviously the most top 5 finishes at this tournament. That also gives me a good reason to play him. So that's kind of what I'm going to be looking at. Scrolling over. Grass stats. Now, for me, I don't necessarily care what the overall POA percentage is. Again, that is the overseed this week, so you can see who your top guys are right here. I'm not going to go over everyone, but obviously it makes me like Rory and DJ a little bit more. Once again, Rahm is another good choice. I don't really see any cheap guys up here, so we're not really getting that much of an advantage. I mean, you can see Matt Kuchar up here, but yeah, not so much of an advantage when looking at that. Now, I'm going to go top down. I will refrain from using any of these guys. 0% to me, not good. I want to see at least, a finish inside the top 10 at least once. So really, I want to see 5%. So these guys here with their POA stats, Westwood, Sullivan, McIntyre, Bezuidenhout, Poston, Perez, Wiesberger, Connors, Long, Ortiz, Answer, and Munoz, I might not play any of them. Primarily because they do not fit that mold of being above 50% or above 5% when it comes to top 10 percentage. But that's not the only stat, the only kind of grass stat to look at. I want to look at Pete Dye stats. Your number one guy, again, is Rory. Rory's just popping out. If it wasn't for swing issues, he'd be the favorite golfer. I still like him. I really like Rory this week. 22.69 is his average finishing position. You can see Fleetwood, Kuchar, Cantlay, Bezuidenhout, Dustin Johnson. Lots of good finishes here for these guys. And then when we look at our top 10 percentage, basically all of these guys right here. Again, we see Bezuidenhout, we see Wiesberger, Corey Connors, Sullivan, Perez. Those are probably just automatic locks to not play for me. Everyone else, it's hard to mix. Like Victor Hovland has 0% at Pete Dye events. You know what? This might not be absolutely perfectly updated, which is a bummer because I think Corey Connors had a top 10 finish at the Players' Championship. I'm almost certain of it. I'm just going to look at my Pete Dye stats and see if it's been updated. Okay, so it does not have the Players' Championship on there. Bummer. Okay. So I think Corey Connors has finished inside the top 10. I would obviously double check that, but the rest of these guys probably don't really care for all that much. And Kokrak shows up, so Kokrak is almost bare min. I might not use Kokrak. And really, that's the rest of the stats I'm going to talk about. So let's go ahead and bring that optimizer into play. Actually, let's look at the bracket first. No. We'll bring the optimizer. So currently, what I have loaded for the optimizer, let's see, did I zoom in too much? Yeah, a little bit. Okay. So what this optimizer is going to do, what it's going to look at is it's going to look at your quadrants. So if I were to go ahead and bring up the bracket, which I also saved here, we have 4 quadrants. So this is one quadrant with 4 pods in it, sorry. And quadrant 2 also has 4 pods in it. Quadrant 3, quadrant 4. Now, you want one guy out of each of these quadrants. That's how you want to be building lineups. So if JT is your guy, you want to stick with JT going all the way through. Okay. Jeez. So if JT is your man, there you go. He's going all the way. Now, you have quadrant 2, one of your guys there at least, figured out. Obviously, JT is $11,200. So you're going to want to figure out someone who's cheap maybe in this. Well, I shouldn't just say in this quadrant, in any of these quadrants. So let's say you like Scheffler to come out of this one. So obviously we would just go ahead and put Scheffler over here. If it's not going to allow me. Pesky Excel with merge cells. So there we go. We have our, right side of the bracket figured out. We want Thomas and we want Scheffler. Now, we probably still need to find someone in the 8K range. Maybe we like Sungjae Im to come out of this. Maybe that's why we're not playing, Dustin Johnson, out of this quadrant, which, hey, if that's your strategy, that's your strategy. Go with it. There's no fault in actually thinking that way. So Sungjae is our guy there, and let's say Zalatoris is going to be our guy here to come out of this bracket, which, hey, to each their own, right? I mean, I'm not going to blame anybody for having that thought. Now you have your 4 golfers from your 4 quadrants, but you still need to figure out 2 other guys on your team. And you want those 2 other guys to either go in any of these quarterfinal finishes, because you want to get as close to the semis with all 6 of your golfers as you possibly can. So that means you need to pick someone else in one of these quadrants, and you only want to pick one guy, one additional guy out of each quadrant. So when we look at this, that also means you want to figure out who you chose to go to the semis. If you've picked Sungjae Im, group 1, you no longer want. You don't want anyone in this group. You want to select from this group. And same goes with Will Zalatoris here. You want nobody from this group. You want to grab somebody from this group, because obviously it's the only way that you're going to get up to Will Zalatoris. So what the optimizer does is we look at quadrants and then we look at groups. And you can see there are 8 groups that I created based off of the bracket group. I have the group names here, and I have the boxes are surrounding what the groups are. So what the optimizer is going to do, first of all, when you get this, you don't want to mess with any of these presets. None of these. You want this to stay at 1 for your max, because let's say if you had 2 in your group max and the optimizer were to go and run, it's going to take that into account. And if you were to do that, that means you're going to grab another guy from this group, and it could be a Robert McIntyre against DJ. He's not going to leave the pod if DJ ends up winning this one, meaning he's going to be stuck there with 3 matches under his belt. That's it. You want to get as many matches out of your players as possible. So you don't want to double up on pods. You also don't want to double up on groups. So because Sungjae came from group 1, I want to select someone from group 2. So therefore, you don't want to mess around with these presets. So leave this to 1 and only leave this to 2, because again, we don't want more than 2 guys coming out of a quadrant. So there we have all that. Now I do also have last week in recent form. You can go ahead and switch these out as many as you'd like. This is just your maximum exposure right here. That's what this means. Always forget that it updates the outlines that I have, the borders. There we go. Jeez, couldn't think of the word. You can go ahead and update any of this information. You can also update the strokes gain, which I don't have loaded yet. And then your salary. If you are a firm believer that there are going to be 2 guys within the 8K range, go ahead and hit 2 for the 8K. That's your minimum exposure. That's what the min here means in this column. The max means your maximum exposure, the most times you want to see one of those golfers. So if I have 2 in the 8K and I run this optimizer, we'll see what it ends up. I mean, it's probably going to spit out the same thing I just see. Or maybe not. Yeah, it spit out the same thing that I see. So basically, it's showing us how many it picked out of each quadrant, and then it's showing us how many it picked out of each group. So I know for a fact that it's not going to mess up because we didn't pick 2 guys out of group 1. So we don't have to worry about that doubling up. That's why this optimizer is fantastic. And you can do that for anything. So like the other thing that we can do, let's say we want, at least one guy. I'm trying to find the one. There we go. One guy in the 10K range. Let's see how the optimizer is going to deal with that. So it picked Xander Schauffele instead. And I also have just random metrics here, so that don't worry about the metric or anything like that. I have not loaded the sweet spot score yet. That's usually the metric I go by. You could use whatever metric you want here. And this is all customizable, so you can change these numbers as much as you want. So if I put DJ at 800 points, whatever you want to call it, run this again. I'm sure it's going to select DJ because 800 points is hard to pass up on. So there we go. DJ now shows up. It's DJ with a bunch of 7K golfers. Another thing you can do is, even though DJ is there, say we like JT, lock JT in. So once it's locked, the optimizer is going to always select Justin Thomas. It actually put DJ and JT together just because Dustin Johnson's points are so crazy. So again, you can go ahead and customize the metric. The one thing, I mean, everything here can be customizable. You can change the names. You can do whatever you like. I would just caution, don't change too much because it's hard. And this is an autosave function. You can obviously turn it off. Actually, you probably want to. But I believe every time you hit save lineup, it actually saves the optimizer. So whatever you do can't be undone. So I would say this, don't mess around too much with this. This you can also change. Now, I have these ownership defaults down here. I actually recommend don't touching these. Maybe if you want to reset ownership, I think this will put everyone to 100%. If you do the sweet spot defaults, actually, you know what? I think I can save. I think I can do this. Let's double check. Perfect. Okay, so now you can definitely hit the sweet spot defaults. I was not sure. And hard reset's just going to reset everything. So as you can see, everything gets removed. The optimizer gets changed. This actually turns to 6. Not great. You don't want that. I would suggest hitting sweet spot defaults. There you go. Puts everything back in order the way we want it. The ownership changes though. That's just something you're gonna have to deal with. You can go if you saw how to change that, you can certainly do that. I mean, I have the ownerships here. It's basically what the spreadsheet's doing is it's going to copy this and move it over to here. And I'll probably change this up too before I send it to you guys for those that do want it. So that way it's not messed up. But when you do run this, you can go ahead and run 10, run 50, run 90 lineups, however you want to do it, or run it once and save. So if I like this lineup, I'll save it. And you can see ownership gets updated right here. If I run it again, it's not going to pick DJ because it's going to look at the maximum exposure against how much it's owned, and boom, there you go. It now went to someone else. I'm going to guess that if you set these max ownerships way too low, you're going to have some ownership issues. So if I were to, just to show you, if I put this to 9% and we keep one 10K golfer set there, we're going to get to a point where, oh no, there's enough 10K guys. Never mind. What's going to end up happening is this is going to error out at some point in time. I'm just trying to get it to break at this point. And I'm going to show you how to troubleshoot that right now. Let's say we wanted 2 guys in the 10K range. We shouldn't be able to do it because the ownership maxes are going to be different. There we go. So if this ever happens to you, it's because you have too strict of presets, too strict of conditionals. And that's just outside of the quadrants and groups. The quadrants and groups you want to keep for the match play purposes, but the fact is it's probably to do with this being too strict. So if I go ahead, scroll down, I'm gonna have to delete some of this. I know why this updated this way. Oh, when I did the, okay, so now the metrics of last week's tournament actually got put over here. I get it. So if I do something like this and we keep the presets to 2, I think it won't break. It shouldn't break. Because now I've updated the ownerships. There we go, perfect. So again, it's probably because your presets are set too strict. So definitely keep that in mind. You can customize all of this. If you want to put minimum ownership, you can certainly do that. I recommend don't have this over like total 100%. So if you did 50% DJ and 100% max ownership, it's always going to look at finding DJ in your lineups. I'm not going to continue running it, but don't put 50, 40, 50, 40 because it's going to be difficult. Like if I were to keep saving this, the optimizer is going to get confused at some point in time because this is the minimum exposures are just way too high. I always like to say, if you have FOMO, just put it at 1. So I would put 1 for everybody, just so I'm playing everybody. I'm not saying I normally do that, but if that was your case, you had FOMO and you wanted to play everyone, just set this to 1. And that way the optimizer will go through and select 1 for each one. But yeah, if you want to look, I don't have a way where you can see on your bracket if it, whoever you chose, so you can come back here and continuously, double check. So I have DJ. I only have 1 guy in quadrant 1. That would be Dustin Johnson. Come back to the optimizer. John Rahm is the next guy. I already know he's down here. So there's John Rahm there. Come back. Jason Day, Matthew Wolf. There's Jason Day. So there's 2 out of this quadrant. Matthew Wolf is right here. Look, we got Streelman and that odd guy. I can't remember what his name is. Let's see, where is Streelman? I'm trying to find him over here, but I'm not finding him. We have this guy. Oh, there's Streelman. Okay, so we have that Antoine Rosner, Kevin Streelman. They're in opposite groups in that quadrant. That's perfect. Same goes with Jason Day and John Rahm. They're in opposite groups. Perfect. We only have 1 up here in quadrant 2 with Matthew Wolf and 1 over here with DJ. So again, the optimizer is working perfectly, exactly how we want it. So again, if you want this, I gave a set of rules that you had to follow in the beginning or in the middle of the video. Go back to take a look. I just want to reward those that do listen and watch this video. So yeah, definitely go look for it because this optimizer is going to be great for creating match play lineups. And with that, we didn't go over recent form, but with the recent form buckets, we kind of did. So if you follow the recent form buckets, you're going to see how some of the recent form golfers do. And obviously I go by buckets because that is my way of figuring out the frequencies of top 10 finishes year in and year out. Okay. So with that, that's going to be it for the preview video. I don't think there's anything else that I need to go over. Tomorrow's video in the strategy, we're going to just really do a deep dive. We'll go more into lineup creation, lineup theory, that kind of thing, to really figure out who the best plays are. So definitely check in with me on that. And I'm also going to do a preview video for the Corrales Punta Cana. So I'll try to get that out tomorrow. If it's not out tomorrow, I'll definitely have it out Wednesday. Just kind of like a, quick before the tournament starts. We'll go over the same kind of information. I'm not sure if I'll have a bucket system for it, but obviously we'll look at course history, recent form, that kind of stuff. So be prepared for that. But for this video, thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe. Again, if you want the optimizer, you can find the rules to get it in the middle of the video. All right, see you later.